Hello everyone, Namaste once again. So in this video, I'm going to discuss about another important psychological process, perception. Please stay till the end of this video because there are plenty of questions asked on perceptual processes for 12th standard NIOS. So let's begin the topic perceptual processes. So we all know that stimulation of sensory organs leads to experience different stimulus and sensation doesn't actually provide us any understanding of stimulus uh, that stimulated the sense organ. It doesn't give you any information about the source of light or the sound or fragrance. So to make sense of raw material that is provided by the sensory system, we have to process it further. So sensation only gives you the raw sensory data, um, like a flash of light or a sound or smell. And what transforms this into meaning is the process of perception. And this is done by using learning, memory, and other psychological processes. This we will be studying in detail in further chapters, learning and memory, because they are also very important for your exam point of view. Uh, and this whole topic is about perception, which is how humans don't just receive stimuli passively, but we construct it actively by interpreting them from our own perspective, how we make sense of the world around us uh, by our own perspective. Now, the process of perception is defined as the process by which we recognize, interpret, or give meaning to the information provided by sense organs. So, sensation and perception, what are these? What is the difference between the two? Sensation is activation of sense organs by the source of physical energy. So, it could be in any form, like sights or sounds or smell or touch, any of them. But what is perception? It is organization, interpretation, analysis, and integration of stimuli. So, transduction is the process which converts this stimulus energy or the physical energy into neural energy. And this transformation helps the brain to process and uh, give meaning to whatever sensory information has been received by our sense organs. Now, there are different approaches for processing the information that is received by the sense organs. One is bottom-up processing and the other is top-down processing. Now, bottom-up processing, the emphasis here is on the features of the stimuli and it considers perception as a process of mental construction. This is how, for example, we may recognize a dog by first recognizing the parts of the dog, by first recognizing the furry coat, the four legs, the two eyes, the tail, and so on, and then going on to recognizing the whole, which is the dog. Now, the top-down processing emphasis on the perceiver. So, this process considers perception as the process of recognition or identification of stimuli. So here the recognition starts with the whole. We first recognize the dog first, then we identify the parts of the dog. And research shows that both these processes are important for us to understand the world around us. So what is the perceiver's role? Perception is nothing but a constructive process. We go beyond the stimulus and we try to find meaning in it. So while interpreting stimulus or stimuli or the events around us, we individuals construct them in our own ways. In this process, our motivations, expectations, cultural knowledge, past experiences, memories, values, beliefs, and attitudes. All of these play a very important role in giving meaning to the external world. So it is not just a stimulus, but how we perceive the stimulus. Now, our visual field is a collection of different elements. It consists of points, maybe lines, different colors, different shades of colors, different shades of each color. So we perceive these as organized wholes or complete objects. Like, for example, we see a bicycle as a complete object. We don't look at the parts of the bicycle and then say, oh, this is a bicycle, right? So this is called Gestalt laws of organization, and this was put forth by German psychologists Kovalkovka and Wertheimer. They said that the human brain is oriented towards perceiving a good figure. That's why we perceive all objects in an organized form. Now, the most primitive organization is the figure ground segregation. These psychologists said that when we look at a surface, certain aspects stand out clearly as separate entities, whereas others don't. Like, for example, words on a page, painting on a wall, birds flying in the sky. Here, the words, the painting, and the birds are perceived as figures, whereas the page, the wall, and the sky, these are behind the figures and perceived as a background. So, to test this, you can look at this figure. If you see the white part, it looks like a vase. And when you look at the black part, it looks like two faces. So we distinguish figure from the ground based on these following characteristics. That figures have a common form, definite form, they have clear contours and they stand out from the background, whereas background is formless, contourless, it stays behind the figure. And figure appears clearer and nearer, background appears unlimited, it is distant. So we always do switch between looking at the figure and the ground. So gestalt psychologists have given some laws to explain how and why different stimuli in our visual field are organized into meaningful whole objects. So these are the different laws. I will be discussing these in detail in class. These help us to make sense of the stimulus around us. So there's law, principle of proximity, principle of similarity. All these help us to understand how we perceive things around us. So there's something called as depth perception, how we perceive depth. And it's very amazing to know about this. It's very interesting how we transform 2D retinal images into 3D perception. The world around us is in the form of three dimensions, but the retinal images, the image of all this around us, falls on our retina in the form of 2D, right? So, how our brain makes sense of 2D retinal images? It uses something called cues. And in cues, there are two kinds, binocular and monocular. Binocular requires both eyes, monocular cues is effective with one eye, and artists use these monocular cues in paintings to create depth. These are also called pictorial cues. So we will discuss again in detail about all the different examples for monocular cues and binocular cues. Perceptual constancy also we will discuss in detail in class. It's nothing but how the objects around us are perceived as something that remain constant. Like some features of certain objects, we know that they remain constant. Like for example, if your friend is walking away from you, you don't think that your friend is shrinking in size, right? You know that the size is constant. When he's walking towards you, you don't think that he's growing bigger in size. And when he's walking away from you, you don't perceive your friend to be shrinking in size. So here the size is constant. And similarly, we have perceptual constancy with regard to shape, brightness, color, and so on. Now we have something called as illusions, which is also very interesting to learn. Illusions are misconceptions from misinterpreting sensory information that is received by our sense organs, and thereby this creates a mismatch between physical stimuli and the way we perceive the stimuli. Now there are two kinds of visual illusions: universal illusions and personal illusions. Universal illusions don't change with experience or practice, and all of us are affected by these kind of illusions, like all these which I have mentioned below, and there are some more we will be discussing in class. Personal illusions vary from person to person. Okay, now we will go on to the PYQs. So in May 2025 set A, there are a lot of 1-mark questions. So this is again example for monocular cue, the only kinetic monocular cue. And here it is movement and intensity, the external factor. External factor which helps us to notice police vehicles and ambulance, because here the keywords are flickering and flashing light and loud siren. So it is movement and intensity. Under different types of illusion, this would be the answer. And transduction is the process of transforming sensation to perception. Here, this is a 4-mark question. You have to name the principle based on the keywords. So for each principle, you have to remember the keywords which will help you, and so that you don't get confused. In October 2024, in section B for 2 marks, you have to explain what is illusion. Please remember all the keywords, remember the definition and mention them. And for this, the phenomenon is convergence. So again, remember, just give a short introduction and then remember to mention all the keywords. So that's about it. In class, I will be explaining in detail about how you need to answer these questions so that you score full marks. With this, we come to the end of perceptual processes. I'll see you again in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.